K. Bantam.
Sadly, however, there appear to be few commemorations, parades, or festivals to celebrate the Pilgrims this year. Perhaps in part because revisionist charlatans of the radical left have lately claimed the previous year as America's true founding. Nothing could be further from the truth. The Pilgrims and their compact, like the founders and their declaration, form the true foundation of America. So count me in Coolidge's camp. On this anniversary, a century ago, he proclaimed, "It is our duty and the duty of every true American to reassemble in spirit in the cabin of the Mayflower, rededicate ourselves to the Pilgrims' great work by re-signing and reaffirming the document that has made mankind of all the earth more glorious." Some, too many, may have lost the civilizational self-confidence needed to celebrate Pilgrims. Just today, for instance, the New York Times called this story a myth and a caricature, in the food section, no less. Maybe the politically correct editors of the debunked 1619 Project are now responsible for pumpkin pie recipes at the Times as well. But I, for one, still have the pride and confidence of our forebears. So here today, I speak in the spirit of that cabin, and I reaffirm that old compact.
Okay, welcome. It's Thanksgiving Day, the 26th of November, the year of our Lord 2020. A very special Thanksgiving special. I want to thank the America's Voice Network, Real America's Voice, for helping us today in putting this together. We've been so much engaged in the combat of the pandemic, and then of this, the impeachment and the pandemic, and then 2020, and now this process of trying to steal this election, that we wanted to, on today, to do something special. And we've got very special guests. We have Larry Schweikert, the author of really, I think, one of the most seminal works out there, The Patriots' History of the United States. Also, Heather McDonald from the Manhattan Institute. She's talking about an amazing article she wrote, a piece she wrote comparing Plymouth to Salem, and really in our conduct around the CCP virus, or the COVID-19 virus. And also Peter Wood, one of the top scholars in the country, to talk about Thanksgiving Day and the Pilgrims, plus a number of people who are dedicating their lives to helping veterans and others to give thanks on this Thanksgiving Day. I want to start first with an old colleague and friend, Larry Schweikert. And what Larry, and I want to introduce you in the appropriate way. That's why I want to tee off with Tom Cotton and really what you did, which I think was so amazing. You know, one of the reasons we have these kids that really don't know anything about America, they've been programmed or with this propaganda from this book by Howard Zinn, The People's History of the United States, that takes he's a Marxist and takes a cultural Marxist view of our country. You and your partner decided to do something about that, and you wrote a book that was many, many times a bestseller. It's been reissued, there's been commemorative editions, etc. But I want to get your sense of, before we get to the 1619 Project and the 1620 Project, or 1620 versus 1619, go back. What was it about Howard Zinn's book that's been so destructive to kids in America and the way they were trained? And why did you guys get the idea to write the Patriots' history?
Well, Zinn's book is engaging. He writes in a very interesting style. He takes incidents and grafts them together, hodgepodge. It's not quite correct to say he doesn't have sources. He just doesn't let you know where they are. He'll tell you about a book but won't give you a page number. And when you finally do look at the source, you find out that he's cut and paste things together to make his stories say exactly what he wants them to say, rather than say the truth. And not that there's no negative stuff in some of the history of America. Obviously, there's some bad stuff there, but it's also heavily weighted with the good stuff. And this is what Zinn deliberately left out. So we did not start off to write a counter book to Howard Zinn. What had happened was that Mike Allen and I had been talking about the status of American history textbooks and how horrible they were, and we decided to write a book that we could teach from. We never thought we were even going to sell it. I mean, when we put it together, the original book was over 2,000 pages. Currently, it's about 900 pages, and it's still quite a read, right? So we thought we were going to have to sell it out of the back of a van somewhere, like study, plastic bags, plastic straws, Patriots history. So we finally got a publisher, which was Sentinel was just starting off, a conservative imprint then called Sentinel. And they thought this would be the perfect book to start it off with. And we did really well, and we kind of hung around in good sales and reasonably good royalties for a number of years. And then Glenn Beck got a hold of the book in 2010, and he began holding it up. I'll pull it back here. He began holding it up every single night. You got to get this book. It's the best history book ever written, and so on and so forth. So that's what really made it a bestseller. We owe the bestseller status to Beck, but it has just kept going, and we are currently in our 31st printing with over 500,000 copies in print. That's not bad for a 1,000-page history book. And Hispanic support. And what we found was that they really, really cleaned up the voter rolls in Florida, actually after Jeb Bush in the 2000 debacle. So where we had accurate data, we were dead on in predicting Trump was going to win. What happened was, apparently, and they've got to make this case still in court, not just to the public, but in court or to state legislators, what happened was massive fraud. Now, as best I can understand, and you've been doing this on a daily basis, so you know better than I do, but as best I can understand, there's two tracks kind of going forward but diverging, and one is what I call small ball. It is Rudy Giuliani's approach to try and get a lot of these little totals overturned enough to give Trump a victory, but especially in Pennsylvania to get all these absentee votes kicked out and perhaps just deny Biden 270 and get it into the House of Representatives. The other kind of big ball track is Sidney Powell with her claims about rather mass fraud. I don't doubt that mass fraud occurred in these 5 or 6 states at huge levels. You've got disparities that are not explained by anything in our experience or our statistical method. For example, here in Arizona, we had a legislative district where the state representative got 17,000 more votes than Trump did. That's not possible, not in any universe. So, but it's not my job to make this case. It's the president's team's job to make this case to the state legislators and to the courts. And they've got to make it fairly quickly because December 8th, when the states all certify, is coming up very fast.
Yeah, that's the safe harbor. In a historical perspective, Trump aside, how important is it that this be taken down to the bitter end? In other words, this be fought very hard to say, hey, every legal vote that has a chain of custody, a chain of title, is certifiable, must be counted, regardless of who the race, creed, gender, political affiliation of that citizen. That vote must be counted. But at the same time, no votes that have lack of chain of custody, lack of title, uncertifiable, are to be counted. How important do you think is this, going back to the Mayflower Compact, going back to the study of your book is called The Patriots History for a reason. How important is us to get this done right?
We have to. I really don't think there is a 2022. I don't think there's a 2024. I think this is the battle, and if we don't win this, they will use fraud to take any election from this point on. So it's and I guess what I'm most disappointed and angry about is that so many people at so many levels, whether it's the Georgia senators, whether it's John James, whether it's some of the other down ballot people, are just not fighting. They're just kind of rolling, we'll get it in a special election. Oh, well, next time. There won't be a next time if we don't fix this now, because they now have it's like a football team. When they run a play and they find a play that works, you just keep going back to that play until they find a way to stop you. The problem is you can't stop most of this if you aren't in office. to stop it. And so it's going to be a major deal if we can't clean this up.
You've written the Patriots' history. You know this kind of unbroken chain we've had back from the beginning. Is this election as important? They had these flag officers, I think 250 of them, that wrote a letter to President Trump a couple of months ago, saying that this was not just the most important election of our time, it was the most important election since the founding of the Republic, because we would be one thing or the other on the other side of it. Do you buy that? Do you buy the fact that this election and the outcome of this election has that level of importance?
No, for the following reasons. I think that the election of 1796 was absolutely crucial because for the first time in human history, you have a leader who is very popular, who's been offered to stay on as a king forever, voluntarily step down. So right there, you've got a pretty high marker. Second most important election was 1800 because you have John Adams, a Federalist, who loses an election, who voluntarily and peacefully steps down and hands power over to the hated Jeffersonians. And he says, these are horrible, horrible people, but the system will survive them. And then in 1860, you had another very path-breaking election where you had a party elected, the Republican Party, that was, for the first time in our history, a party opposed to slavery. And by the way, folks, the Democrats, from their history, were created to protect and preserve slavery. Just a little note for those of you who want to be voting Democrat.